The Maple Leafs split the weekend back-to-back, but lose their captain in the process. This is the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DiStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morisuti. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. What's going on, Dave? How was your weekend?
Busy. Really busy. You're getting all the family stuff done.
Well, that's it, right? The last weekend before the holidays start up, and you get that last minute shopping. You've got a couple dinners that you got to attend to, some parties and whatnot. It is a very busy weekend. It's a very busy week all around, and the Maple Leaf schedule just as busy as well. Not only do we got a game tonight again against the Winnipeg Jets. There we go. Third game in 4 nights. We also had a weekend back-to-back Friday, Saturday that we got to go through. And the Leafs, they end up splitting the weekend back-to-back. They had a convincing win in Buffalo, took care of the Sabres, handed them their, 12th straight loss at that point, and then followed it up with a very lopsided loss to the New York Islanders. But Dave, let's be honest, the main story coming out of the weekend is now the status of the captain, Austin Matthews. He played on Friday after sitting out practice, morning skate, scored on Friday, but then was unable to suit up on Saturday with an re-aggravated injury from the game Friday night against Buffalo. Boy, oh boy, not a very Merry Christmas for Austin Matthews this weekend, huh?
No, I wonder if another trip to Germany is in line now.
No, that guy's a fraud. First, Christian McCaffrey, he ended up re-injuring himself, and now you've got Austin. That guy's a fraud. I'm sorry to tell you. Nobody go back there. No one.
No, Mike might not be able to step foot in Germany after that comment. But yeah, no, it's. I get the frustration. It caught me off guard, obviously, seeing him, being ruled out and hearing Berube talk about it. But I mean, if you watch that game against Buffalo, like I was watching it, and just, every time Matthews got hit, I'm like, yeah, they're going out of their way. They're going out of their way to knock him down. They're going out of their way to. It's not a hit. It's I'm going to hit to knock you down. I'm going to hit. I mean,
hit to hurt. Hit to hurt.
Yeah. Right. And this is and for the people who are like, they should just say what the injury is. This is why. Because if let's say players know it's a wrist issue, if they know it's a shoulder issue, if they know it's a back issue, it becomes a target. It becomes something. Now, I understand that, in other leagues, injuries are disclosed all the time, and like football, and it doesn't. Players aren't targeting usually in those, but in hockey, you can be a little bit more deliberate. And we saw a little bit of that from Buffalo on Matthews.
Well, why don't we take a look at what is believed to be the incident that re-aggravated the injury? He was in front of the net, and he took a pretty hard shot. Nice cross-check to the back, ribs, lower back, one of the two. You could kind of see right here. Here's where it happened. Right there, Gilbert comes in, gives him a big old two-hander right to the back. Not exactly sure where it exactly hit him. It looks like it was in the side of the ribs, but it looks like he's holding his lower back. So, we don't know exactly what the injury is, to your point. But what we can say is that it was a re-aggravation of whatever the previous ailment was. And that's not a good thing, because going into the game, he was, quote, fighting through things. And that's exactly what we were told ahead of the game from the head coach, right? He missed out on practice Friday morning. And, at first you think, oh, maybe just a maintenance day. They've played a lot of hockey. And then Berube offered up some commentary and said he's been fighting through it. So they took him off the ice for an extra day, but he was going to suit up and play. He did. He scored. They won. But, more damage was done, obviously, during the game. And he was, re-aggravated that injury. And now I don't know how much longer he's going to be out for. Did you see anything today that suggested a timeline for Austin Matthews?
No, they didn't practice today,
Yeah.
so they didn't practice on Sunday. So, I mean, they just did a back-to-back. There's no way they're going to be practicing. They got an early on Monday, so there was really no reason for them to be on the ice or really doing anything. If I had to give my best guess, and look, Craig Berube went on and said, "I'm not a doctor, right?" But my guess is he's not playing against the Jets.
No. He's not playing against the Jets for sure. At the very least, give him the rest of the Christmas holiday and see what happens when they get back.
Yeah, they got another set of back-to-backs, and
there's about 4 back-to-backs in December. It's a lot of hockey, man. Like that's crazy. Like that is insane. And you look at the game on Saturday too. That was such a tired team. Like the Leafs have played so much hockey over the course, like 11 games in 21 days is crazy. And then they've played 3 games in 4 nights, the second night of a back-to-back. And that's the performance that you get. And Austin Matthews wasn't there either. So that's another kind of dejection to the team. And that's the performance that you end up getting. Like they've played a lot of hockey over this stretch. So like I look at that game against the Islanders and I'm not too upset about the loss. It's one of those nights where nothing went right. No one really had it going. I think they were tired. You could tell right from the get-go, right away, that the team just was not into it. And it was just a weird game from start to finish, really, from the Maple Leafs. And, it just is what it is. But going back to Austin Matthews, I really hope that this is not going to turn out to be like a season-long thing where it's going to nag him all year. But it really is starting to feel like, unless he gets extensive time off, which I don't know if the Maple Leafs could really afford that. It really, really stinks what's going on right now. I wish we knew more information. I wish that was the case, but we hope for the best, I guess, for Matthews and his health, and hopefully he can rejuvenate himself as quick as possible and help his team get back into their winning ways.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to take that. You know what? There's going to be stretches where he's going to need time off. And look, the big question happening right now is the 4 Nations. Should he even be allowed to go if he's still dealing with an injury? Man, if I'm the Leafs, sometimes like we can't afford for you to, like, that 2 weeks could be more beneficial than you playing in this tournament, right? And it was suck for the NHL, but
yeah, no, it's a great point. Like that could be a crucial 2 weeks for him to really let that injury, whatever it is, rest up. And that'll be real interesting to see what happens if this is still nagging him come then. Because again, like you don't want to risk re-injury for something that is so meaningless like this 4 Nations Cup tournament. It literally means nothing. Like if it was for the Olympics and for a gold medal and for your country, different story. But like this doesn't mean anything. Like this is a dumb tournament. If it's still nagging him by then, and he's still, if the team is still like micromanaging his minutes and his time on ice, and he's still working through it, there's no shot that he should be there. He should not be there. That's my opinion. If he's still dealing with this, come mid-February, he should take the 2 weeks. Get himself good, spend the 2 weeks doing rehab, getting a lot of work done on that back, rib, whatever the heck is ailing him, and should not be playing super competitive best on best hockey, unfortunately. Just shouldn't be.
No, exactly, right? Like it's the Leafs have such an important, this is an important year, and like this isn't an Olympic year. I know the tournament means a lot to the NHL, but it does. I think personally for the players, it's nice to suit up and represent your country, but that's not the tournament that they're really pushing for, that they want to go to. It's the Olympics. So
Right.
that hopefully would maybe be the conversation to try to sway Matthews. But that's a tough one because he hasn't been able to do it yet. So you just really have to, if you're the Leafs, just lay it out as best as possible.
Yeah, and he's got like what 6-7 weeks until the tournament, so like there's still time to obviously get back to as close to full health as possible. But yeah, we'll see. The problem is we don't really have a lot of information, and that's kind of the issue. The lack of transparency with the whole Austin Matthews situation is what we're dealing with here. All right, we'll continue to break down the weekend games. Matt Murray made his season debut for the Leafs. We'll talk about that. David Kampf, 1C, possibly again tonight. We'll get to that as well as we preview Leafs Jets in a little bit. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. PrizePicks put its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today, use the code LOCKEDONNHL, and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DiStefano, Dave Morisuti with you here as we are each and every weekday, Monday through Friday on the Locked On Leafs podcast, free and available wherever you can get a podcast audio-wise, and also up on YouTube as well. The Maple Leafs splitting the weekend, getting a victory over the Buffalo Sabres, and then falling 6-3 to the New York Islanders on part 2 of the back-to-back. They also lost Austin Matthews in that one. We just spoke about that. And because they lost Austin Matthews, Dave, David Kampf gets thrusted into an interesting position over the weekend. What do you make of David Kampf? Top 6 Dave Kampf.
Hate it. It was I'm just like, really?
Dude,
really?
what if there's a time as good as any to move William Nylander to the middle of the ice, is it not then? It's like, okay, we don't want to move Domi because we want to keep that third line intact. We obviously, Tavares is a center. Who else do we have at that point? It's like, that is the reason why you experimented with Nylander. Even Marner. Like, Marner apparently is open to doing it.
Yeah.
But, like, Nylander at least has taken some reps in camp and training camp and in practices. Like, if there's any time to do that, to have Nylander play down the middle in a game and get some reps on it, live reps, would it not be that game against the Islanders? I really don't understand why David Kampf was a top 6 center in that game.
I'm just so happy the Leafs decided to pay William Nylander $11.5 million and the opportunity for him to continue. He's leading the team in goals, so it's not like he's having a bad year, but it's like to really show your value of being $11.5 million paid. Maybe playing him at center, right, for one game. We're not saying you got to take over the job forever. One game, and they decided they couldn't do that. Like,
yeah,
it's just like it's not like you're bringing up like a Domi-esque player to play first line set, like top 6 center. You're bringing in a 4th liner.
Right.
Like, it's a 4th liner. Like, you see that he's a fill-in at practice when Matthews is on a maintenance day. We'll just throw David Kampf up there because, it's a placeholder. We don't expect him to actually play in that role. And Craig Brewer is like, psych, we're actually going to do it. And
yeah, you kind of knew that the reason why they did that was like you end up with Nyes, Kampf, and Marner. Decent checking line, I guess, and that's kind of what it becomes is a checking line. right? And then you allow the second line and the third line to be more offensive, I suppose. Like that's really the only thing you could say about that line, but it just did not make a whole lot of sense to me. But so that kind of was like we're getting to the good, the bad, the ugly. Like that was kind of the bad for me was that decision, the roster, the lineup, after Austin Matthews to not have a better option for your team. And right away, it really didn't start well, and the team went down early and often, and it was just a bad game overall, and bad decision making from the coach. But let's start with the good, as we typically like to do. We'll do the good, the bad, the ugly for the weekend. Um, I thought that obviously, the Buffalo game, much better. The start, great start. They get
Yep.
off to a good start, score a couple of goals early, and they really they didn't allow Buffalo to take the road crowd out of it.
Yeah.
Right? All the Toronto faithful was down there. They scored two quick ones. It gets pretty loud pretty quick. And all of a sudden, Buffalo's chasing the game the whole night. And Toronto just continued to pour it on. Kind of felt bad for Lindy. At some point, I thought he was going to just say, all right, I've had enough and retire, handed them the 12th loss. But again, though, that third line ends up scoring 3 goals again, a goal from each and every one of them. It's
Unreal.
back-to-back games they did that, which I thought was incredible. So that was kind of the good for me. The start was great, and then that third line played really well again.
Yeah, I mean, I'll add to the third line again. Looked good. William Nylander's continues to pot the puck. He's not far from the NHL lead in goals.
He's one off now, no?
He's right there. And I mean, we got to give a kudos to Matt Murray, man, because
Yes.
I didn't expect him to get the Buffalo game. Now I see it. Maybe it makes a lot more sense to give him the Buffalo game because that was the easier opponent to throw him into.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
Yeah,
It wasn't amazing, right? Like you could tell that he needed the goal support, but I mean, for him not having played in the NHL for over 600 days, not too bad, right? Considering everything he's been through, double hip surgery. I'm sure there was a lot of nerves too. So good on him because I didn't expect it. I didn't expect him to be able to come in and be back in the NHL and win a game.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was points where you didn't expect it, I guess. Once he got called up, though, and once he started to play in the American League, I think it was expected at some point you were going to see him. And then it's like, I mean, it's just kind of like riding a bike, right? Like there's a good goalie in there. It's just when he's got to stay healthy because availability is the best ability. And, he's been relatively healthy this season and he was able to come in and get a win and get a 2 points for the Maple Leafs, which is very nice. And, it was weird. And then they end up sending him down the next night and they bring up Hildeby to back up Joseph Wool for the second game. And I don't know what they're doing. Some gymnastics of some kind. I guess it makes sense in Tree Living's head, I'm sure. But yeah, so for sure, shout out to Matt Murray, who was able to step in there, get a win, make some big saves early in the game, and pick up a full 2 points. The bad, I mean, the decision making, the lineup, the entire game against the Islanders was pretty bad, I guess. Lots of odd man rushes given up, and lots of rush goals that they gave up, and they got to do a better job of staying on top of pucks. I thought that it was just a very weak game coverage wise. Thought there was a lot of mistakes that were made, and the Islanders made them pay.
Yeah, I just thought it was just a bad start against New York that sunk them. They were playing catch up. It's bad playing catch up, but it's also bad playing catch up when you're coming off the second half of a back to back, and like when your coach
third game in 4 nights too.
And your
11th game in 22 days. Like it's a lot of hockey.
A lot of hockey, and your head coach calls a timeout, and he's and like it was clear as day. Start playing the right way, because it's been slipping, and like kind of getting into my ugly here. Like the blue line has talking about how good the blue line has been.
Well, explain to me why this weekend he's decided to again. We go back to the weird. Well, what is he doing with the lineup? Decided to shake up the pairings this weekend. Why? Things are going well.
like
Explain to me why
Jake,
McCabe and Tanev got split up. There's no explanation, right?
I think it's because the Benoit Timmins pairing was looking so bad that he needed to break him up.
So put in Phil Myers.
I know, like Phil Myers was supposed to play. Phil
So
Myers
you're
was
breaking
supposed
up
to
your I don't understand. You're breaking up your top pair so you
Yeah.
can get your third pair going?
Yeah.
Like what?
And Benoit's game hasn't been. I know Benoit's hasn't been not as bad as Timmins has been. Like Philip Myers was supposed to play. I can't remember which game exactly he was supposed to come in. All of a sudden, no, actually, Philip Myers is not going to play. It's going to be Timmins instead. It's like, what has Connor Timmins done lately to say he deserves to stay in this lineup, other than taking bad penalties, not really defending well in front of his net, and look, and Jake McCabe didn't have a great game against the Islanders, also because he was kind of thrown onto an island. I mean, the goaltend, Wool had a tough game. It was a really just bizarre weekend. And again, you have depth with your blue line. You have a guy like Philip Myers. I think he's actually been pretty good and more deserving of playing right now than Timmins, because at least he helps you out better defensively than what Connor Timmins does.
Yeah.
Especially on the second half of a back-to-back. Why aren't you bringing in the extra defenseman? You had no problem bringing in Ryan Reeves and Connor Dewar, right? And then you decide ultimately, nah, we're not going to bring in the other defenseman that we have sitting in the press box. So yeah, maybe that's more on Craig Berube just not making that what I thought would have made the most sense in terms of changing the lineup. And just like they look slow. The Islanders were running all over, like skating all over the zone, doing whatever they want.
Tired. They really did look tired. Like it's been a lot of hockey that the Christmas holidays cannot come any quicker for the Maple Leafs. Really cannot come any quicker. And they had another game tonight too. Or I guess this afternoon. Like it's an afternoon game. So they don't even get a full 2 days off, rest before they have to get back out there for a game. It's a 2 p.m. start, little next gen afternoon game today against the Winnipeg Jets, another tough team, the top team in the NHL. So it doesn't get any easier tonight. Why don't we come back? We'll get to preview that game on the other side. I'm Mike DiStefano with Dave Morisuti. You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players are going to score goals. I like betting which players are going to get some shots on net. It's thrilling. Really, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the Locked On Network. The Locked On Leafs podcast continues with Mike DiStefano and Dave Morisuti. We got another game today. This is a little afternoon action with the Maple Leafs hosting the Winnipeg Jets. It's the next gen game, so it'll be an afternoon game. Imagine we'll see the Bieber jerseys. That's usually what we kind of see for the next gen games, little Bieber jerseys out there. And what this usually means too is Mitch Marner typically comes alive in these next gen games and these afternoon games. I don't know why. It just doesn't feel like Mitch Marner always seems to have big games in these in this time slot. Like usually against Carolina, there's the 1 year against Jersey. Can he keep it going tonight against the Jets?
I'd like to see if maybe this is the time they may move him down the middle, because he'll just I don't think he'll do it, because
you would rather see Marner than Nylander. Like I personally, like, I think Nylander would make.
I mean, at least Nylander has the experience of it, and it'd be easier because Marner hasn't really had the chance. It would just be fun in the next gen game just to do it. But no, they really should be. They really should do Nylander down the middle. I know they like that Tavares, Pacioretty, and Nylander trio, but I think that you got to do your best to get a Mitch Marner, someone that he could play with that can provide offense. Because David Camp ain't going to do it.
No.
And you can do the Tavares, Pacioretty, Nyes trio if you really want to keep to do that. They already did it before, and I'm trying to think who would you play with Marner and Nylander.
I would honestly go Marner, Nylander, or Marner, Tavares, and pick whoever. You can go Pacioretty, and then go Nylander with Nyes and whatever. Pick another player you want. Throw Nick Robertson up there.
Or a Pontus Holmberg even.
Or Pontus Holmberg. Yeah, sure. Throw Holmberg up there if you want to keep that third line together, I suppose. Yeah, throw Holmberg up there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you could do that. I think that would work to me, but I don't anticipate that being the case. I think we'll probably see a similar lineup to the way we did before, and then they'll just kind of use it as a matchup line, that David Camp line. That's probably what we'll end up seeing. I hope that's not the case, but it's quite possible we could see that. Why don't we take a look at what the Jets lineup is going to look like heading into this game? Again, Jets, the number one team in the NHL. And keep in mind, the last time these two teams played a couple of months ago, it was the Maple Leafs coming out with a 6-4 victory, handed the Jets their first loss of the season. And so, the Leafs, I wouldn't say they have their number, but they've played really, really well against Winnipeg of late. They've won now, 6 in a row against Winnipeg. 8 of the last 10 games they've been able to beat Winnipeg. So they do have their number, actually. I think I'm confident to say when you win 80% of the games in the last couple of years, you got their number for sure, in my opinion. But yeah, I think that this should be a game that Toronto should hope to bounce back from. But again, they've just played so much hockey, and going up against a Jets team, it's going to be tough. Do we got the Jets lineup here?
Yeah, I mean the Jets. I mean, as you said, they're a pretty solid team because they've been doing it all year long. Right from the start, they went on that. Now they did cool down a little bit after they went on that unreal start to the year, but they just have such a balance. I think it's like a real balanced lineup when you look at it. Like Kyle Connor has been lights out. This year. Shifley, Mark Shifley, even like Gabriel Velarde. What a pickup! Like with that, like with the Dubois trade, like they made out like bandits against the Kings on that one.
Oh yeah, like Velarde plus I think Follow was in that trade. They got a pick, and there's another player that was part of that deal too. Yeah, Rasmus Kupari, who was also part of that deal. Like they did well. They certainly did well. But yeah, like you look at the lineup, you've got Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Gabe Velarde. It's been one of the more effective trios in the NHL this year. Like Kyle Connor just continues to score, Scheifele's scoring, and like you said, Velarde's turning into quite the player. Cole Perfetti's getting an opportunity in the top 6 now, so he's getting a chance to produce with Nemesnikov and Nick Ehlers, who's always been a solid player. And then that Niederreiter, Lowry, and Appleton line, that's just a really solid checking line. Like those, that's a heavy line, and they're tough to play against. Like that's who's going to end up going against the Leafs' number 1 line, right? That Lowry, Appleton, Niederreiter, and they can shut people down. And then you got Barron, Gustafsson, and Iafallo as the 4th line. And then defensively, it kind of drops off. It's like a top 3, bottom 3 situation defensively for this team. Like you got Morrissey and DeMello as your top unit. And you got Neil Pionk and then Cale Fleury as your 4th defenseman. And then Billy Hanola and Colin Miller as your 3rd pair. So, the Leafs might be able to pick on that bottom 4 a little bit. Like Morrissey, DeMello, that's a solid pairing. Yeah. But maybe they can try and pick on them a little. But it does get difficult when you got a guy like Connor Hellebuck, the number 1 goaltender in the world, in net right now. That does make things a little difficult to score, which is, been an issue for Toronto over the course of this season. Scoring goals has not been their forte, funny enough. So we'll see what ends up happening tonight, but that's the lineup that they'll be taking on.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up Connor Hellebuck. The guy just shut out the Minnesota Wild.
Yeah, there you go.
One of the best teams in the league.
There you go.
So if you want to really know how the Jets are doing, they're flying pretty good right now.
Well, let's look at by the numbers, the matchup breakdown.
Yeah, I mean, we should probably have. I forgot to change the Matthew total on that one, but
It's fine.
okay. He's there in spirit, guys. We have
the numbers are changed. That's the big. That's what
the numbers are right. The numbers are correct. I think you look. Yeah, I mean, they got to such a harsh. That power play. If you remember one thing against that game against the Jets, where the Leafs did win, the only reason why the Jets kept that game close is because they were just scoring everything on the power play, like everything.
Yep. Yeah, I'm looking now. 2 power play goals they got. Yeah, so they went 2 for 4 on the power play in that game. So Toronto, like special teams, is gonna be big, right? That's going to be big in this game for them if they can, somehow muster up a couple opportunities on the power play, score one, and then just play perfect on the PK. It'll give them a better opportunity to score, but that's tough to do. Like I said, 31.8% power play for the Winnipeg Jets right now. It's pretty solid, and it's a team that could score, right? They average 3.6 goals per game. They're only giving up 2.49 goals per game, so they're averaging a full goal more. So it's difficult. It's a difficult team to win against, but it's possible to win against them. Why do I know that? Toronto did it literally earlier this year. They're the first team to give them a loss on the season, and they'll look to do the exact same thing tonight. Or this afternoon, rather. I keep forgetting. It's a 2 p.m. start, people. 2 p.m. start.
4 o'clock's gonna come by, and Mark's going to be like, "Oh, I missed the game."
Yeah, well, no, I'm hosting Overdrive today, so I'll be paying attention while I'm doing my prep work and whatnot, and then I guess the game will be ongoing in the first hour of the show, which will be interesting. But yeah, should be a good game tonight. I am excited. Jets Leafs is always it's weirdly a rivalry matchup. Like they're always very heated. Now I'm curious how heated it'll get right before Christmas. Like, is this a game where maybe both teams like let's just get in and get out, no injuries, no nothing? No, you don't think? You think it'll be heated?
No chance. Like the Leafs were quite feisty this weekend, especially in Buffalo. The Jets are always a feisty team. I don't think it matters. Like the Jets take a lot of they're a culture team in a lot of ways too. Like they don't have a lot of those like, we're not gonna be as overly physical. They're a physical team. So I think you can expect, well, I don't know, maybe we might not expect it as much. We'll see. But I think you're gonna expect, if there's that, especially if Ryan Reeves is playing, you'll see some pushback. Like the Jets always play the Leafs tough. I think, like, look, you're talking about the 2 best teams in Canada right now, right?
Yep.
They both want to have their say as to who is the better one. And like the Leafs got, like the Jets have a lot to want to prove against Toronto after what happened earlier in the year, right? And like the Jets, when they lost, it was a bump in the road because they did have a bit of a downturn where they weren't winning as much as they did to start the year, and we figured that it wasn't sustainable what they're doing, but it was also not going to be as bad as what happened after they lost that first game to the Leafs. But it's again probably a good game for the Leafs to kind of get their focus back after 2 lesser opponents. They beat Buffalo, but New York, that should have been, even though they were tired, still a game that they should have won because the matchup was better on paper for the Leafs.
Yeah. Also, totally forgot. Not a single penalty in that Islanders game. How many times have we watched a game where there's no penalties on either side? Either side. Like, not a single power play. It's kind of crazy. There's no power plays in that game. Yeah, so it should be going tonight. Again, reminder, 2 p.m. start time for this game today. Jets and Leafs. All right, that'll do it for us here today on the podcast. I'd like to thank you all for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On at Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at D_. More studio, follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys tomorrow. Until then, keep locked right here on Locked On Leafs.